Hello, my name is Rogelio Chavira, and I'm English as a second language instructor at El Paso Community College. I'll be referring to English as a second language from now on as ESL. I've been teaching here now for close to 15 or 16 years. What happens when foreign students want to come to the United States and they want to perhaps enroll in a college or some type of higher education? What they do is they basically enroll in an ESL course. What these courses traditionally are composed of, it might be maybe 3 or 4 semesters. Usually the classes might include an ESL writing class, maybe a reading class, maybe even like a grammar class. And so what we do here at the college, we basically have 4 semesters that the students go through. And in these semesters, a little thing different that we do is that we combine the reading and the writing course. And so this has been where most of my students have the biggest problem. When they write, that's an area where they cannot fake it. It has to be either wrong or it has to be right. And so I would say that 99% of my students are from Mexico. They are students that they mostly come from northern Mexico, from Chihuahua. And so I rarely have any students that might be from Korea or maybe they speak Chinese. And so when I get these students, the idea is to get them prepared to enroll in a college and a university. What I decided to do then, during the phase 1, when I joined the Teachership Academy, during phase 1, I decided to count the errors that my students were making. I wanted to see where I could help them the best, what I could do to maybe do a better job. During phase 1 of the Teachership Academy, if I can describe the Teachership Academy, it's a staff development program. It's a program of excellence. We get a chance to listen to some of the best speakers in the country. And so during phase 1, I really got a lot of ideas that I was willing to try. And so I started counting the errors that my students were making. My first part, of course, was to get permission from the students to be able to do this. And I was able to collect 4 tests. When I got the tests, I went ahead and cut off their names so I wouldn't be able to see who they were. And then I started counting them little by little. At the end of the semester, I discovered, for example, the biggest problem my students had was that they weren't exactly able to pick the right vocabulary word. For example, in Spanish, you say La Casa de María. And so when it came to writing, they would write the House of Maria. And so, of course, I had to correct that and kind of switch things around. In English, we only use 2 words. That would be Maria's house. Another mistake where we see that, for example, in Spanish, we say La casa es verde. No, La casa es color verde. And so, again, they would write the house is color green. And so I was really beginning to identify with those. As I work with my students, I sort of had the idea, maybe I can come up with some activities that I can do, something to be able to help them. And so at the end of the phase 1, I started coming up with what I call the ESL writing pack. And these were a bunch of handouts. There were a bunch of different activities that I came up with. My ESL pack was made up of 4 different parts. In the first part, we did a lot of dictation, where they had a chance to listen to the proper usage. The other part was error analysis, where I would give them like 10, maybe 10 or 12 sentences, and maybe 2 of them were correct and the rest were wrong. And then when I used all the strategies that I was learning in the Teachership Academy, I was able to maybe get them to work in groups, correcting each other. The third thing that I did, I sort of started working closer with the Writing Center at the Rio Grande campus. I told them that my students were going to go there, that they would need help. And so again, all these things were sort of beginning to gel. The activities, for example, with every single class, I try to use the cooperative learning for them to work in groups. And so again, there was like a big, the difference was very clear. So entered my next phase 2. The phase 2 of the teachership started in 2012 to 2013. And at that time, I had this information, the handouts that I had worked on, and all of a sudden it was phase 2. So since I had that information, I decided, well, why don't I try it again with another group and see if I can see any difference. So one more time, I went through the process, I got permission, I worked with the students, right? And so as I was working with the students, for example, I mentioned before that the biggest error that they were making was not using the correct word or not knowing the correct vocabulary, and I call this using the wrong word. As you can see during this part, in phase 1, I had a total of 54 errors, but in phase 2, it went down to 19. On a personal basis, as I grade these papers, it's so much better to grade papers that only might have 3 or 4 mistakes rather than papers that have like 23 mistakes. And so again, it really made a difference. In the next part, and I thought that this would be like my #1 mistake. In Spanish, you can say things like, tengo hambre, I'm hungry. And so students will write that. And so again, I started working on fragments, and as you can see, the fragment errors went from 31, which is a large number, and it went down all the way to 9. And so I was really beginning to see a huge. With the spelling, even though my students are allowed to use a dictionary, again, maybe I wasn't stressing for them to bring their dictionary to class. And again, as before, they were the total number was 23. During phase 2, it went down all the way to 15. I also encouraged them that when they went to the writing center, then maybe they could get some help on dictionary skills when they weren't sure exactly what word they had to use. The fourth error was their use of commas. Again, the rules in Spanish are a little bit different than the rules in English. And again, as you can see, the errors went down from 21 errors all the way down to 11. And so I kept working. I guess the key in working with our ESL students is, if I can just say it, it's practice, practice, and practice. And that was what I was trying to do. Another major error were the run-on sentences. It seems like my students from Mexico, I think they do a lot of creative writing. And so I was getting like essays with one long sentence. And so again, as I started working there, it really went down from 19 to 9. The third error was, of course, the misuse of tenses. Before, it wasn't really a big mistake, but again, I think the textbook was doing a real good job with that. They were writing sentences like, tomorrow I went to the store. And so again, my students were doing an okay job with that. Number 7 were the use of capital letters. Again, in Spanish, you don't use a capital letter for the days of the week, for the months. The languages do not use a capital letter. So again, they went down from 17 to 8. At this point, I mostly concentrated on the top 5 errors. And as you can see, as the semester went on, the difference was not that big. When we talk about subject-verb agreement, again, a lot of our Spanish speakers will say, he work at the store. And so again, I think our textbook does a good job. So again, there wasn't a very big difference in that. For the number 9 was the use of prepositions. It seems like in Spanish, I've heard there's only like maybe 18 or 19 basic prepositions that you use, whereas English has maybe 50 or 60. And so again, but again, I'm thinking that maybe the difference, there wasn't a big change. It might be that the topics that I picked, the topics that the students worked on were not the same, and so that might make it a difference too. And finally, in Spanish, you might say, yo quiero jugar. You say, I want play. And so again, my students will always forget to write that little 2 that goes right there. And so again, there was not a big difference. And so again, these are areas that I will continue to work on. In conclusion, I think with the study that I worked on, I'd like to thank the people that put the academy. It has really given me a lot of different ideas. I enjoy trying to use these ideas. And I think that what I would like to try to do is maybe use my pack every semester and see if there is an improvement in the long run. The final thing that I might think of is that I would like to try these with a different population. Maybe I can try this with Korean students or Chinese students. So I'm kind of looking for a chance maybe that I can cooperate with other instructors across the country and see if the results are the same. Okay, well, that concludes my study. I thank you very much for being a good audience, and thank you very much.